Good evening to the January 22nd, 2019 City Council meeting. Roll call, please.
Mayor Webb.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Aubrey.
Here.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Here.
Councilmember Lacuro.
Here.
Councilmember Holland.
Here.
Approval of the agenda, Council.
I'll move approval of the agenda as presented, Mr. Mayor.
I support.
Dissension, discussion. We have an agenda. Civic announcements from the public. Anyone? Civic announcements? Seeing no one. Civic announcements from the City Council, Administration. Public discussion. Seeing anyone for public discussion, you can come up to the mic, give your name and address for the record.
Good evening. This is Anya Reed, living at 41 Westmont Avenue. I just wanted to get a status update on
Yeah. Spoke to him, but I would make sure he does it next week, so you're not,
Yeah.
okay. I'll get the shoot.
Yeah, we have spoken to him.
Yeah.
He indicated he would address it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll follow up.
Thank you. Anyone else for public discussion?
Hello, my name is Stanley Scott. I pastor Salvation Temple Church there at 2500 North Pastor Scott. I don't know, is this the place for me to give comments about my concerns in relationship to the show cause hearing? Or should I come later?
That'll be in
Oh,
public
later?
hearing.
Okay,
It'll be, the show cause hearing will be opening up shortly.
okay, then I'll wait till then. Thank you.
Any other public discussion, any other topic? Close public discussion. Show cause hearing 24520 North Chrysler Drive. Administration?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, as council and mayor are well aware, this particular property has been before our hearing officer, and we are in a state of non-compliance there. In fact, we are in a state of substantial non-compliance for a period of several years. We have attempted to work with the controlling interest in this property to see a resolution. At this point, no such resolution has presented itself. This building is substantially derelict. I don't think that there is a great deal of disagreement that this building, especially the older section of the building, the old school section that was built in 1941 is derelict and needs to come down. And the administration's recommendation is that it be demolished. I have Roger Conchier, he may be able to give you some additional information on the violations. You have a list of violations for you in your packets.
And Mr. Finch, come to the podium, please.
You-
And you want to give us an update on your findings here?
Well, the last time I had been in the building was March 14 of 2018. Hadn't been back since. Couldn't tell you whether there's been any sort of progress towards repairs or updating things that need to be in the building. The older part of the building, such as the city manager indicated, is in very poor condition. And had maintained its, in any fact, any way, it appeared to me at the time I was in for quite some time, we had lower level, basically had some large fans blowing to try to keep the area dry because of the moisture that was wicking into the building, covering the floor, ceilings, walls, things of that nature, in a state of disrepair. Kitchen located in that building, all fixtures basically were not functional or removed, and things such as open waste lines and so forth were existing in the lower level, which could present a problem with safety of the building and so forth. It's just basically in a state of disrepair, and it would take, in my opinion, a substantial amount of funding in order to be able to bring the building back up to usable condition. No heat on in the building either at the time they were there, so got down into the boiler room area and so forth, a lot of repairs necessary down there. The boiler had been removed, and a lot of electrical violations existing in the building, the other part of the building, school part. And again, water flowing in certain areas and so forth.
How about the church side?
The church side, there had been some problems with the roof leakage. From my understanding was they did have a contractor. He'd gotten the leak repaired at the time. I didn't see any evidence of water leaking in at the time. We did get on the roof to look at the steeple, which basically we had the upper level of the steeple collapsed and caved in and came down. And while we were up there, there was pocketing of water in certain areas, but there hadn't been any water that was visible coming down inside the church. So primarily the major portions of repairs would be to that older building, church portion of it, I mean the school portion of it. So.
Any other comments? Any questions for Mr. Pinch from the council?
Mr. Pinch, when we're talking about substantial repairs, we're talking beyond the hundreds of thousands of dollars, or basically upper hundreds of thousands of dollars.
At this point, without having gone through it and do a cost estimate,
Rough estimate,
I would say that would be correct.
Any other questions from the council,
Um,
administration?
I have a question. Can you tell us again how long these violations have been, when they were first noted, and any information that we have about repairs that were done or citations that were addressed?
Well, again, it was March of 2018 when we had the meeting over at the site and walked through the property and did our normal inspection of the property. Haven't been back since. Don't know whether or not any repairs have taken place.
Through the chair.
Yes.
I spoke with the city manager earlier, and I'm aware of the history of the church and that this portion of it had been tagged decades ago. And apparently there's a huge gap in violations and enforcements. And I'm looking at deeds going back to the 1960s, but violations that go back to about March of 2017. So this just recently came up on the city's radar.
I couldn't answer you that. Again, it was scheduled, it was ordered to be scheduled to have an inspection take place, which the building department did.
After the steeple.
Yes, the steeple basically triggered, my understanding would be triggered us to get involved on the property to make sure we're not going to have something collapse in and possibly harm something.
Were you involved in the inspection process back in the mid-90s?
No.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council for Mr. Pinch? Thank you, Mr. Pinch. At this time, I'm going to open the show cause hearing. 2 minutes per individual, since so we can try to get everybody through for their comments, if you don't mind, please.
I think before we do that, we should hear from the church, and we should hear from...
You want to do that?
Yeah, I think so.
Or we'll hear from the pastor and his attorney.
My name is William Garrett. I live at 3800 Adams in Oakland Township. I represent Landmark Community Church. May I have more than 2 minutes?
You have as much.
You may have one, yes.
Thank you. I'm going to dispense with any biblical passages or other references. I'm here to represent the property rights of the church, and because I've been led to believe that some of you may be more inclined than others to affirm the hearing officer's demolition order, I'm here to try to persuade you that you should not affirm it, and instead you should disaffirm it. Where I want to go is to request that you either table this matter for 6 months, or that you disaffirm what the hearing officer ordered, or that you send the matter back to the hearing officer with certain specific instructions that a different hearing officer be selected, in accordance with the standards under the Home Rule City Act. And 2, that the hearing officer be ordered to follow the procedures detailed in the Home Rule City Act. Some of the arguments I intend to make to you today are arguments of a legal nature, and Mr. Schiffman can tell you whether I'm right, wrong, or otherwise. Some of them are practical. My purpose is to persuade you to do the smart thing. Maybe the easy thing, if you want to, if you believe that to follow the demolition order would really rid the city of those buildings. Maybe you would think that was the easy thing. I think instead what it would happen is it would result in long-term litigation. The property would remain in its current state for a long period of time because there are remedies available to the city, remedies available to the church, both under Section 1983 in federal court and or in state court. Briefly, you do not have in front of you any hard estimate as to the cost of demolition. 2, you do not have any estimate as to what the property would be worth after demolition. 3, you do not have any estimate as to what it would cost to repair the property. And 4, you don't have any estimate as to what the property would be worth once repaired. The only good news that I have for you is that as a result of, frankly, my efforts, the church signed today a listing agreement with a national brokerage firm, a copy of which I sent to Melissa Schwartz, with whom I've communicated on and off over the last couple of weeks. So they have a 6-month listing to try to put this property in the hands of some, presumably, a developer, whether to put up single-family homes or something else. The church will consider selling less than all the property, but the listing agreement covers all of what you perceive to be basically 2 square city blocks plus the vacated street in between. The church's property immediately to the south, sometimes referred to as the bus garage, has already been listed and is subject to a purchase agreement that I thought was going to be result in a closing last week. I'm now told that because of title problems, it's going to be closed next week. So the bus garage will be in someone else's hands in a matter of a few days, and with any degree of luck, we'll find a buyer for the entire 5.9 acres. Now, some of the other comments, and that's one of the reasons that you should table the matter or disaffirm the order for demolition. Another reason you should disaffirm the order for demolition is what you've just heard from, I guess he's the head of your building department. The property has not been inspected by those who intend to demolish it, i.e. this, may intend to demolish it, i.e. the city, for nearly 10 months. You do know, simply by driving by, if you've driven by, that there have been repairs. There was an allusion to the fact that some repairs have been made, and tens of thousands of dollars of repairs have, as I understand it, been made. So, are you going to demolish a building because it theoretically still has some code violations, when you don't know the raw economics of the transaction? I think the smart thing is to step back and not do it. There are other reasons that you should step back and either table the matter, disaffirm the hearing officer's decision, or send it back to another hearing officer. Number 1, which building are we talking about? You've heard reference to the fact that there's a church and a school you've heard reference to a portion of the building having been constructed in 1941. Well, if you look at the paperwork that brings us here, it's impossible to tell whether this hearing is about all of the structures on the 5.9 acres, just the school structure, just the church, or the 1941 section of the school structure. So I respectfully suggest that it is unfair for the church to ask it to show cause why something shouldn't be demolished, when it can't be determined by looking at the paperwork what is proposed to be demolished. I think it's also unfair to ask the church to respond to an order for demolition or a threat of demolition where the city hasn't attempted to inspect the property for 10 months, 10 and a half, I guess. Another thing that I want to point out, and this is more perhaps a legal nicety, but the notices that are sent out are themselves ambiguous. The notices to the church say in one breath that they are to follow up on the hearing officer's order of a prior date. They say in the next breath that they can show cause why the property shouldn't be demolished, repaired, or maintained. Well, depending on which portion of the notice you rely upon, you don't know what you're expected to do at this hearing conducted by a hearing officer whose qualifications we'll get into in a minute. I think, with all due respect, that your own ordinance under which you're seeking to enforce in this proceeding have been violated. The ordinance says that in order to issue a notice to show up at a hearing, there first has to be a finding that there's been a code violation. I'm not aware of any such finding with regard to any of the notices my client received. The ordinance also says that after the hearing officer enters an order, the city must, or shall, it's a mandatory term, conduct a hearing within 30 days. Well, the last hearing officer order was entered back in August. It's now January, nearly 6 months later. And during that period of time, work has been done on the property, which ought to be considered by the hearing officer. In addition, even if the ordinance that you seek to enforce has been fully complied with, I respectfully suggest that it is invalid or unconstitutional. And that is because the section in question is stripped out of Michigan's Housing Act. Michigan's Housing Act concerns dwellings. The word dwelling appears repeatedly in the act. But your ordinance does not incorporate that portion of the Michigan Housing Act into dwellings. That is, it does not, it leaves that section out. So I think that when whoever wrote this particular section for you, wrote it, I think they inadvertently omitted reference to the fact that this is supposed to apply to houses.
And what act is that, if you don't mind me asking, what number?
It's the Michigan Housing Act. You found that,
And what subtitle?
just a second. It's Michigan compiled laws 125.401 and following.
Okay, is there a particular subheading that you want us to?
Well, The similarity between your ordinance and the Michigan Housing Act can be found between the language of your ordinance and MCL 125, 539, 540, and 541. For instance, your ordinance and the state statute define a dangerous building. However, an earlier section of the statute says this act shall apply to all dwellings, not all buildings. When the language of the statute gets put in your ordinance, there's an omission in your ordinance that it only is intended to apply to dwellings. Here's what a dangerous building is. Leaving aside whether or not it covers all structures or just dwellings, both the statute and the ordinance define dangerous buildings as falling into several categories. And none of these are applicable to the church. I'm going to paraphrase, but I guarantee you I will not paraphrase out of context. A means of exit does not conform to the fire code. In other words, a door or a window or a passageway doesn't conform to the fire code. I'm not aware of any accusation against my client that exists. A portion of the building is so damaged that its structural strength or stability is appreciably less than it was before the damage. You can go on and on, but but the definition of dangerous building does not fit the code violations with which my client is charged. In addition, even the notices given by the city to my client do not say you're supposed to show up in front of a hearing officer to discuss whether or not you've got a dangerous building. So I think that there is a disconnect between what the city has done and what the city ordinance is. I think there's a disconnect between the city ordinance and what is lawful. Another reason that the city ordinance should not be enforced is because it flies in the face of the Home Rule City Act. Hazel Park, like many other cities, is a Home Rule City. The Home Rule City Act can be found at MCL 117.1 and following. Its preamble says, and this is a paraphrase, it's an act to provide for the incorporation of cities and to provide for certain powers and duties. And it talks about the fact that a home rule city may create an administrative hearings bureau. And it talks about the fact that a home rule city can employ administrative hearings in order to get rid of blight. And of the accusations against my client, one accusation could be blight, although I haven't seen that word used. But what does it say? It says that to initiate a proceeding for a blight violation, the city shall, i.e. must, issue a written violation notice which an authorized local officer records the occurrence and existence of one or more blight violations in which directs the named person to pay a civil fine for the violation or appear at the Administrative Hearings Bureau. It talks about how the people that staff the Administrative Hearings Bureau are selected. It talks about the fact that the ordinance for this Administrative Hearings Bureau shall provide for adjudicative hearings by hearing officers. And it talks about the qualifications. Each hearing officer shall be an attorney licensed to practice law for at least 5 years, should be appointed in a certain manner, shall have the following training: instructions on the rules of procedure of the administrative hearings, orientation of each subject area of the ordinance violations they'll adjudicate. You'll have to observe administrative hearings, participate in hypothetical cases. And then it talks about what the hearing officer has to do. The hearing officer has to make findings of fact and put them in writing as well as an order. Here, what do you have? You've got a one-liner, demolish. You can't, you look at the order, you can't tell what's supposed to be demolished. You're supposed to demolish everything that's above ground on 5.9 acres. Are you supposed to demolish the south half? Are you supposed to demolish the oldest part of the south half of the 1941 structure? So I would suggest to you that the smart thing to do is to take a step back, take a deep breath, let commerce take itself, let the church sell its property, because if the object of the city, even if the object of the city is to get rid of the church and get the biggest development you can up there, to get the biggest tax base you possibly can, that'll happen a lot sooner if the property is sold than if this winds up in litigation. We all know that. I mean, who profits from litigation? Lawyers do. Sometimes clients. But it's the lawyers, right?
Right.
So I mean, my retirement's already well taken care of. I've been doing this, as Arnie knows, for upwards of 50 years. And I don't need any more, but I'll take more if you want to send it my way.
Thank you for your time.
But
Is that, do you have anything
I
else?
urge you to do the smart thing, which is to table this for 6 months. The 6-month listing agreement, I've got copies of it here if you want to see it. The only thing that's blocked out is the selling price. Or send it back to the hearing officer and make sure that he follows, that he's selected in a manner consistent with the Home Rule City Act and follows those procedures, or disaffirm the hearing officer's order and start from scratch, not with something that's 10 months old. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shipman?
First of all, I would comment as follows. Bill Garrett has made a living in the Oakland Circuit Court. He knows where the court is. I heard nothing from Bill Garrett relating to the condition of this building and that it's going to be fixed or the building's in good shape and we're going to demolish a building that's in wonderful condition at a big tax loss. Legally, all these arguments I don't think are appropriate for the members of the council. We know you know how to get to 1200 North Telegraph. What I believe this council, and I don't vote, is concerned about is the condition of this building, and will this building meet the standards that apply in Hazel Park? They're not running around trying to tear buildings down just to make things easy. So I'd like to hear what's the intent to take care of the violations, how soon is that going to be done, when are they going to be taken care of? If you don't want to discuss that and say the city doesn't know what we're doing, then ultimately it'll be decided by some circuit court judge, which will cost everybody money, and I don't know. All the city wants to know is when will these violations be taken care of? There's been plenty of notice. You wouldn't want to live there. You apparently have seen the violations as well as anybody. Don't tell us what we're doing wrong. That's why we have city attorneys to advise the city. tell us the realities, that there are no violations. The building is in great shape. It's habitable, and I didn't hear any of those issues. So that's the only comment I have at this point.
You want to open the public hearing now?
Before we open the public hearing, any comments from the council? Do we have any desires to table this and have it come back to us before we have a public hearing?
I would say have the public hearing now.
Public hearing? Okay. I'll open up the public hearing for 24520 North Chrysler Drive. We will start with Bev Phillips, 61 West Morehouse.
She's good. She's passing.
Vanessa Menard, 537 East Annabelle. Let's come to the podium. Pardon me, Jim. Thank you. Yes.
Hi, yep, my name is Vanessa Menard. I'm 537 East Annabelle, Hazel Park. Been a resident here since 2004. My parents lived here since the early 60s. I've been going to Landmark Community Church, well, I would say since 2013. And I am their food distributioner. I'm licensed. And there's nothing wrong with it. You guys sent us from one area of the church to another area because I guess no one liked the building. I have severe asthma. And when I go into that building, it doesn't affect my asthma. And that would be the first thing if there was all this mold and everything that people are complaining about. So I'm here to try to keep our church going. I have not too much to say other than this, that if you shut the church down, there's nowhere for me to do my food distribution. I have 150 to 200 people that come through there twice a month. I have 55 people that are shut in that I have delivered to. So I don't understand why, what's wrong with the church is probably what I'm trying to get out. The pastor has done everything he could. There's good things going on in the church. When I first started going there, they had health inspections where people off the street out of Hazel Park would come in and have health screening. There was eye tests in there. I mean, there was so much going on, and then everything is put on hold because we can't do it. I'm not going to stop my people from getting food, and right now, I really don't want to stop it because of this here federal shutdown. So half of them are on food stamps, half of them don't have cars, and 9 out of 10 of these people are Hazel Park residents. I've tried to get them to come in today. We would have had a room full, but because of the weather, and some folks walk. So I'm just up here trying to keep my church going so I can continue doing what I'm doing for Hazel Park, to be very honest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Are you hosting your food distribution out of the actual church or out of the school building?
It was out of no. It was out of either building, to be honest.
Currently, where are you hosting it out of?
Right now, we're doing it in the parking lot. That's where we've always done it. But the school building was where we would put the pallets or extra food that's left over from passing out. And then you guys put a damper on that, so we moved down and we're now using the front of the church.
Because it was deemed unsafe for humans, which means it would be deemed unsafe for food as well. So moving to the church is a wonderful resource, and I'm glad that you continue to do that in the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Advance, 24520. Would you like to come up?
Town Vance, 1131 East Jarvis. I'm here in favor of the church. I'm not a member of the church, but we are a sister church here in Hazel Park, and our church works very closely with Landmark. They do a wonderful job during the summer handing out food. They do help a lot. I heard reference made back to 1990, there being violations in the church or in the school building. I know that school building was functioning and operating in 1990 because it was in the 1990s when the city wanted to move City Hall up to that building. So at that particular time, if there were violations, the city really should have been addressing them. So I think that since the city failed to address the violations that they failed to address in the past, that should not be held against the church currently. So I think that you need to move forward based on Mr. Pinch's evaluation that he had months ago. And again, setting up there, I don't know how you can make a decision based on old facts and old materials. I know that work is being done in the church. Mr. Pinch is not able to stand here to say, yes, he saw work being done in the church because he hasn't been back into the church to review the work being done. So for you to make a decision on old facts, on facts that you have no idea what was or was not done inside the church, I think it's doing a disservice to the entire residents of Hazel Park, not just to the church, to all the residents. The residents use that church, they need that church. It is a landmark for Hazel Park. So again, I urge you to follow the attorney's advice. Either table it or start over from the beginning. Have Mr. Pinch go in, make a reasonable list of what needs to be done, and not every time an inspector goes in, hit them up with more violations. I had heard that also. They have a list, they do a list, they get another list, they do that list. They have no idea where to start and where to not finish. So again, I urge you to leave the church where it is. Don't make any decisions to demolish any part of the church. Thank you.
Michael Clapton?
She's spoken up for me.
Okay. Is there a Michael Ralph?
Good evening, Council. I'm a member of the church, and I've been working with Pastor Barry through all of these proceedings. I was instrumental in working with him to put together a plan, which I heard nobody's seen. So even though it's been presented to the city 3 different times, I hear people haven't seen it. So you need to get a copy of it and study it and understand the dates. Now, we have an integrity problem in the fact that what people say, they don't mean, and we're not able to put together. Now, my background, my father was a probation officer for 30 years. My godfather was a godfather of the CIA, and my Sunday school teacher was the most decorated military veteran in U.S. military history. So I didn't grow up with being able to tell a lie. But that's all I've been hearing, is that people can't get their story straight. We could spend a lot of time with evidence in and around that. I urge the city council to do, as the attorney said, and stand back, collect proper information. There's been a number of thousands of dollars of work done to the roof. The windows have been repaired and a number of other things. So even when we were in a meeting, your city attorney, misinterpreted photos, which she claimed was disrepair, when the interpretation of the building that she was making was completely inaccurate. She had never been to the property, and she had never seen the property, so how could she understand it? She doesn't understand construction, because she'd never been to the building. She never understood the construction of the building. She'd never been inside it, and she never walked around the property. So how in the world can somebody not be there, make those kind of accusations? And you can listen to it in the tape in the 3rd meeting of how she is grandstanding. I've spent too much time, but you guys need to do your homework. I'm sorry, but I grew up around people that did their homework. I always did my homework, academically and professionally. So I just urge you to do that. Thank you.
Stanley Scott. Welcome.
Hello, again, my name is Stanley Scott. I pastor Salvation Temple Church located 25,000 North Carson Drive there in the old Stevenson House building. This part of the council I know and have been familiar with since we've been here and what have you. This part, you're getting to see me, maybe hear me for the first time. I'm going to need a little more than 2 minutes, if you'll allow me. But I'll do my best to be as succinct as possible. I want to put out a word that I think we could also consider as well. And in this day and age, I think that word is image. And I want to not speak to specific individual persons on the council, but I want you to pay attention to the potential of the image that's going to be attached to the decisions that you make in reference to this situation that's before you. And secondly, the other word I want to put is the point of hardship. Maybe even to stretch it to say unnecessary hardship. For me, I noticed in relationship to how the City of Hazel Park and Council has been working. At some point, maybe the attorney mentioned, or one of the persons mentioned, why now? After all this long time, things have been going on in such a way. And then it's kind of also interesting to me, if something happened in the tower, why are you having big issues about what's going on in the school portion that's not being used or not purported to be used? So therefore, it seems like there may be an attitude of the council placing unnecessary hardship on the potential ministry that's going on in Landmark Church by its congregation, specifically to the feeding of families with 1.2 million pounds of food over the last several years that's been given freely to residents in Hazel Park, other places, but then they drew it back to be more specific to supplying the needs of people in the specific Hazel Park community. And then I just want to add 2 other little personal points that I have in relationship to Salvation Temple Church. This image business has come up even with us after all of what we have been through in establishing our ministry here in Salvation Temple Church. I don't want to make this a big deal, but there was a time that I was either away from the city, another state or something. Maybe I was in Houston with my 10 little grandbabies, which takes precedence over everything. But one day, some representative from the city of Hazel Park came to our building and literally forced his way into the building to go downstairs to do some alleged inspection without calling ahead. I was on the telephone with a person. I said, well, tell them that we're not ready because I need to have the person who handles our mechanical situations be there to be able to properly describe what's going on or find out what's necessary. And I asked that person to at least wait until I have an opportunity to have the proper individual come to me once we are contacted that the person is coming. And this guy got a little laughing, well, I can call the police and they can make you let me come in. And I'm kind of like, boy, you don't just be walking up into my church without introduction and without invitation. So then, therefore, that kind of image is potentially damaging to the goodwill sense that the council should want to have with the residents in the community. And then the last point, the building that we are in stood vacant for somewhere between 5 to 7 years. I remember when I first became interested in the building, directed there by God, I spent a lot of time going constantly, locking up the door, trying to keep it closed so that the vandals, the little kids coming in and blah, da, 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 da. And I'm kind of like, 5 to 7 years, that building sat there and the city didn't do anything about it? Why now, you see? And so I just want to encourage you to take into consideration, yes, the physical building, the physical structure, those violations, etc. What is the church doing to make it better? I want you to also pay attention to your image about what is the community going to feel when you cut off the opportunity for them to be receiving thousands of pounds of food that they need for their day-to-day existence. I appreciate you all. I thank God for you all, and I look forward to continually being in good relationship with you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come up and speak? If you don't mind. Come up. Need a name and address for the record.
Gregory, I live in 7375 Parkstone Lane in Bloomfield Hills. I did the work at the community church after March. I was directed by the pastor to go over there, stop the leaks, try to button up any parts of the house or parts of the building that were open to infiltration by critters and whatever else. Sent my crew over there. We took care of the leaks. Stopped, as far as I know, stopped the leaks from happening. Sorry, I'm a bit cold. Stopped leaks from happening and made sure that everything was at that point watertight. Now, we didn't do a full roof replacement, but we did stop the issue of the water infiltrating the building. As far as I know, since it has stopped leaking, it's dry in the building now, which was that was the big jumping off point. We reflashed the building, replaced the windows that were broken, and repaired the fascia that was missing. Again, I haven't been there for a couple months, but I haven't been called back out either. So people were addressing the condition of the building at this point, and as far as I know, it is dry, and it's not getting any worse.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Does your company provide remediation services for water damage? Was there any treatment that you provided for mold or contamination from the water that had been in the building?
We were not directed to test for mold, so we don't know if there's any mold or what kind of mold there is.
I'm going through this with my home because I did have a house fire. So these are all standards that I'm involved in with my home and my repair. So these are things that are concerning to me. So do you have a list of the repairs that you've done? Do you have invoices that can be provided as well as photographs? Or?
I do. I have both. And the list that we were going off of was provided, as far as I know, from the city as to phases that they wanted to have things addressed. I know the interior was secondary to stopping the leaks and stopping the animals and the water from getting in the building. So we started at phase 1. We hit a roadblock. We made sure that we stopped the water from getting in, and we were waiting to get to phase 2. But again, like you know, mold is a living thing. You take away what it lives on, and it can't survive.
But you still have to treat what has been affected by the mold for it to be able to go back into that area.
In theory, yes, but it goes dormant.
Not in theory.
No, absolutely in theory.
It's definitely not in theory.
I've got classes that will tell me, I can show you that in theory mold goes dormant. So it doesn't reactivate until it's exposed to water. So it's not a theory, it's a fact. It's science. So at that point, it has to be treated if you're going to re-inhabit. But
Correct.
no one's re-inhabiting at this point.
It has to be treated if it's going to be being used again.
But it's not being
being
used.
habitable.
So.
Well, it's currently not because we have a block on that.
Well, it wasn't being used to begin with. We were just there to stop the water from coming in.
So it was not being used. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to come up and speak? I'm going to close the show cause hearing.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I believe that all of the speakers that are here today are here for the right reasons. I believe that everyone that spoke supports the mission that the church is doing with the food program that they distribute. I believe that everyone here supports the idea of what they think the church could be. Unfortunately, there has been a long-time systemic disconnect from the dream of what the church could be and the reality of what that building is. Now, my conscience is clear, and Barry David, I believe, will tell you, if you look him in the eye, that I have worked with him many times in the past when he has been on the verge of serious problems and/or shutdown and/or condemnation and/or demolition orders. I have stayed those orders. I have worked with him. I have looked with him for solutions. I have looked to him for solutions to this problem. And unfortunately, we still find ourselves here today without a resolution. I will recap just a few of the things that we've worked with and some of the ideas that he's had there. We've worked with him to have an auto repair thing at the garage. That didn't work out. They were storing cars that were repossessed at the garage. We had to put a stop to that, unfortunately. The school was occupied by a belly dancing instructor. She had to leave because the school portion of the building was unfit for human occupation. We've had flea markets, we've had school proposals, we've had carnivals. I have worked with him every way possible. When the steeple became unsafe and large shards of steel were falling off of the steeple and had the potential to bounce into the roadway, the city of Hazel Park stepped in. We took over that project because he did not have the financial resources to deal with it at the time, and we secured that steeple. And he did pay us back, but we did step in. So as you can see, we have worked with this church. Councilman Holland rightly talks about the gap. Well, my very smart building department secretary, Lynn, did go back, and we did find some things here in 2016 that I would like to share with the city council and share with the viewers here. This is in 2016. This is another thing that they were going to house missionaries or something there. This is a hose hooked up to the meter through the window with some putty around it, bringing natural gas into the church. Right next to that hose, hanging right there, is an electrical socket hanging by two open wires with an electrical cord in it. I have a whole book full of pictures of the derelict situation of that building. Again, we want to work with him, but nothing ever changes.
That's cool. Maybe we can cut the chase here a little bit. I'm kind of inclined, and my suggestion will be to have a reinspection and have an itemized list of repairs needed as of today. Since it's been 10 months, an informed decision can be made better that way. And also have the legal rights and ordinances that the mayor and the council may need up here too.
I think
idea based upon the information from the inspection and our hearing officer, and give an adequate amount of time for this to happen, I think would be a good idea. So we can cover our ass.
I don't think it's uncovered at all. When an attorney has nothing substantive to argue, they argue process. So that's an old trick, and that's fine. And if there are deficiencies, those deficiencies will be heard in circuit court, and we'll deal with them appropriately. That's why we have city attorneys here. So you guys are the ultimate deciders of fact, and the ultimate deciders of this situation. But this never gets done. And once again, we will punt again, and once again, the residents of Hazel Park will have to deal with this, and we will come back and we will argue. And there again, it's up to you.
So in general, I support the idea of doing a reinspection, but my question is, if we send Roger Pinch out back into that church tomorrow, is there going to be enough repairs made to change our mind, or are we just going to find the same continued violations? I'm looking at photos. We know that there is leaks, so the leaking has stopped, but the damage from those leaks hasn't been addressed, is my understanding. So there's electrical problems. Okay, so we stopped the leaking, but have we fixed the electrical? So I mean, these photos may be from earlier in 2018, but my understanding is the majority of this has not been fixed. If you can show me otherwise, tell me otherwise, then I will reconsider how I feel about this. No one sits up here and wants to demolish a home, a church, a business. We don't want to do that. None of us, I feel confident, none of us want to do that. But we have to consider the safety of people and what's practical and realistic. So I would support getting updated information, but I'm genuinely concerned that I'm not going to see something that's going to change my mind, because we've had 10 months for these to be repaired. Before that, there was time for it to be repaired. We've been postponing this hearing. We've been postponing these proceedings to give more time, but I haven't heard anything change. So that is my concern, unless we see a real plan that can prove that this is going to be fixed, that is going to be safe, that is going to be habitable, that is not a danger to people, then I will reconsider my mind. But if the next inspection we get doesn't say that someone can move in and live in there tomorrow, I know it's not a dwelling, but I'm just saying, if it's safe tomorrow, then yeah, let's talk. But if it comes back anything but, I don't know what other choice we have.
Councilman LaCure?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This purchase agreement that's been signed is a new piece of information. Didn't know that as of 6:30 this afternoon. I'm aware that a demo...
Mr. Mayor, it's not a purchase agreement, it is a listing.
You're right, I'm sorry. Thank you for the correction.
Is the listing signed and executed?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a list.
And do you have a purchase price for the church?
I'm not interested in the price. We don't need that.
Well, I think we do need that because there's.
I do not need the
there's an
price.
important- okay.
Well,
There is, please listen to your.
There is a little bit of concern, because an unrealistic price, then things could go on and on.
No, it won't go on.
Okay, as long as you get that, as long as you guys.
I just want you to understand, so if it's listed at $20 million, for
Can I finish?
Yes.
This, I'm going to say, I want to give them the 6 months, but are we able to make it in a situation where this is, if it's not sold in 6 months, are these repairs that they claim to made? Did they pull permits?
There are no
Did they pull
No.
permits?
No.
That's the question, thank you. You're doing repairs without pulling permits. We don't know whether they've been done well, right, or not.
I think
rather
he had,
see
did
this
you have
place
permits for
sell.
the roof? He may have had permits for the
We're
roof.
not talking to the audience at this time. We're going to ask the city councilman.
Well, I'm trying to make sure that I have the proper answer that he asked me.
All right, go ahead.
Has the were roof repairs pulled, or was there a permit pulled for roof repairs? Or needed?
I applied for a permit. I was told that it was under review. We waited 2 or 3 weeks. There was nothing was moving forward. Every time I called daily on the progress of the permits, and I was told it's under review. It's in the back office. I wasn't able to ask anybody what was going on with it. I wasn't able to get any information. Nothing that we did was structural, so we fixed what we could, basically to stop the water infiltration. But no, we applied for a permit. We were stonewalled. We had no resolution to it. We paid for it, or not we paid for it, but we were waiting to pay for it, and basically we had the bond put up. So we had.
So I'm not sure that I really want to go for a new inspection at the moment, to just allow them to enter in, what they have entered into the listing agreement and wait there.
I think you want the inspection. I think everything that you do and every decision that you make,
The inspection.
unless you just want to give them 6 months, and that's your thing.
The inspection is done tomorrow. It will be useless in 6 months.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just want to be brief. The application, so when they appeared for the hearing in June, then they were given until June 27th to submit a permit and a bond. The bond was submitted without the permit application. The permit application was submitted 2 weeks after the deadline, thus why the permit was never issued.
There you go.
What about the lack of communication?
Do
I'd like to make sure that there's no more work done, period, and it's listed. That's it. And if you've got work that needs to be done, it needs to have permits pulled.
Here, this is why you have to listen to what I say on this, okay? Because it's important. If it's tagged, we're not going to allow permits until there's a plan of action that is approved by this city council that tells them what they need to do, and then they need to adhere to it. And part of that is a timeline. So we've missed some timelines in the past with the hearing officer. Is that a correct statement, Mr. Campbell? So, since we've missed those timelines, this is what you can choose to do nothing and simply leave it. You're the city council. You are the 5 sovereign actors for the city of Hazel Park as elected by the people of this community. You're charged with making this decision. You don't have to make this decision. You can simply tell them, thank you for playing, and let them walk out of here and do nothing. And that's pretty much what we've done for the past few years. Again, I like Barry David. I want to give him another chance. Okay, but I also like the city of Hazel Park too, so I want to protect my city. And I want to make sure that, well, if we give him another chance, that we give him another chance, and that chance has some teeth. So if he fails to follow through again, then we can take some action. And I think that you guys all know that I've done nothing but bend over backwards to try to work with this guy over the past several years, to the point of perhaps I've been stupid. And that's what I think I told Barry David. So I think that we want to protect the residents of the city of Hazel Park. At the same time, we want to give them a chance to actually, if they're really going to sell it, or they're really going to fix it, to really do it. And I don't think that they lack the desire to fix it. I think they absolutely lack the capability. The congregation is smaller. If he could have fixed it, he would have fixed it. If he's really going to sell it, because I've heard 2 conflicting messages here. I've heard the attorney talk about, the sale of the property, and then I've heard some of the members of the congregation talk about fixing it. I've heard the council talk about fixing it. I've heard the council talk about selling it. I think what would be best here is a unified motion that covers everything. If you take a look at the situation in its totality, and you order demolition, but you give them time to come back here to you in 30 days, we'll be told the time that they have to appeal in circuit court. They have 21 days to appeal. We could toll that time. We could issue a demolition order and have it brought back to you before we execute it. There are all kinds of things that we can do to try to compel some action here. Perhaps they will find an angel investor. Perhaps they will find a donor that wishes to give them enough money or bequeath them enough money to actually fix it. All of these things are within the realm of possibility. However, none of these things are a certainty. I think it's best if we protect the residents of the city of Hazel Park and we give them the opportunity to actually do what they say. Because then the ball will be in their court, but the ball will be in their court, and we've kept some sort of control over this process. Now, in each and every way we do this, it gives us the ability, if they don't do it, whether intentionally or simply because it's not possible, it gives us the ability to mitigate this problem and deal with this derelict property. Okay? We need to, if you want to order an inspection, if you want to delay it, that's fine. But there has to be a resolution. We're either going to say, you're either saying you got 6 months to sell it and no permits, which is what you said, or you're saying you want it fixed up, but we can't give you permits. So we have to have kind of a unified thing that creates a decision tree, and they want to talk about what they want to do with it. We've already allowed them to be master of their own destiny for years. Again, just because I didn't write them tickets all the time, because I called up Barry David, because I like the man, okay, doesn't mean that there hasn't been problems. And when Beth said that, we were able to go back, and I found 2016, and there's other pictures and things like that, that we've looked at, that we did address, but we didn't.
Through the chair, that's a problem.
Right.
It's a problem if this stuff hasn't been addressed. And the goalpost keeps getting moved when you want to talk about why involved.
The goalpost, I'm not moving the goalpost.
I've heard some things tonight that really have me concerned.
If you want to offer proof about that, I'm certainly willing to listen. But I know that I've never moved the goalposts on them. We've always tried to work with them to get something done. And what I'd like to see tonight is
through the chair, one of the notes that I took was an evolving list of repairs, that something was made and then it was changed. You know, I have some questions.
Right, but
I really
I'll
do.
just point out, in a decaying situation like that, you're gonna have an evolving set of repairs. Because you're gonna see more and more decay, you're gonna see more and more problems take place.
Have they been allowed to make repairs? Or has this just been kind of put on hold?
If you have to decide what you want.
I would be inclined to let this purchase play out. On the fair market, they've got a shot to make some serious money.
Do you,
List it, let's follow
then,
this, list
then
it.
you gotta do,
It's 6 months,
you
they have a
gotta
chance
do one,
to
you
to
gotta
rebuild.
do one or the other. If that's what you want then, okay? They can't, because what I don't want to have happen is in 6 months, they're gonna come back here. There's gonna be some minimal repairs that someone makes, the building's gonna be substantially derelict, and what's gonna happen is that we're gonna be in the same spot that we were, and
I
it's gonna be
understand.
worse.
The bus garage
So-
has been sold, that
Right.
parcel has been sold. So there's something to build on there. This is a desirable corner.
But we need to see, again, that something actually happens there. And the only way that you can ensure that something actually happens there is to put some teeth in a motion. It's up to you. I can't make you guys do anything. I can only advise you. You guys can tell me, go pound sand. That's fine. You guys are the boss, and we'll do what you say. That's relevant, but is it?
This looks like they've made a decision.
Like I said, usually, when you list these things, that's why the price, and Jeff Campbell's factor on that is important.
I know, CVS.
Because we need to make sure that we're protecting the residents. So that's my only comment. I think you need to craft a motion that does both. I think you need to craft a motion that gives them a chance to do what they're gonna do. I'm all for that. I just wanna make sure they do it.
Pardon me, I have a couple questions for the applicant. If I could talk to his attorney and Mr. David for a second, would you please step up? Since we're getting down to the end here, I just have a couple questions. Your intention is to list the property and sell it. Is that your intention?
Yes, it's been listed.
Okay, and if we make this motion for you to have the opportunity to sell this property, I would like for you to have 3 estimated costs of appraisal of what the property would sell for. So that we have 3 independent, so since price seems to be an issue, 3 independent estimates as to what the property would be valued at.
You want us to get 3 estimates?
3, please. And bring those to the city when you list the property, as to what price you sell them to list it for.
Okay, so you want 3 estimates. And you want us to then bring those estimates to...
And yeah, please, to the administration so we can
Why?
have-
I'm just asking.
Because I think, like you said, the price is a value of...
No, all I wanna know, again, hear me out, because I think this is what you want to
I'm getting to that.
I don't know that.
Give me a second. That we at least have some commonality here, so we can come, so Barry, David, and his attorney and the church can come to a resolution with the city if this is their intention to sell the property. If they're not going to sell the property, they need to tell us now.
Oh, no.
What do you, yeah, that is the question.
Who is Mr. Trump?
Can I finish, please?
I'm sorry.
I'm just trying to come to a resolution here.
That's uncalled for.
I think some of his comments are...
You're uncalled for, that behavior.
Can we-
You're a little more professional than that.
I want to get to this resolution, please. So if you could do that with the motion, I would appreciate that. And then we would like to make a decision based upon it. I just wanted to clarify that that was your true intentions. Thank you. I would, go ahead.
Before you 2 step back, I'm sorry, I have a question for you just really quickly. Are you intending to sell both the church and the school building, or are you just intending to sell the school building?
The whole thing.
The whole property? Okay.
It's being listed as a single unit. It's 5.9 acres.
Because I do know that it's 2 separate lots, but I understand that part of the second parcel goes through.
It's 2 blocks, and
Yeah.
then there's an east-west street between the 2 blocks, which is vacated. So it's basically a nearly square piece of property.
Correct. Do you have plans to relocate within the city? Or would you have plans to relocate within the city, or?
I think pastor wants to relocate the city, he has to find another location. Unfortunately, a potential location is already under contract, namely what's called the bus garage building, which is roughly a half acre that's
Right.
immediately south of those parcels. The problem there is there isn't enough parking.
Okay. Understood. Thank you for answering the question.
I'm going to make some more comments. It's nice that we had so much participation from the residents to come out and support this church. Except everything you're supporting, the guy's going to sell the church. So you're not going to have what you were looking for. Right? If the property's sold, Vanessa doesn't have a place to distribute the food out. But that's the intention, okay? This is the intention, is to sell it. So everybody that supports the church wants to see the church stay, wants to keep the church. That's not happening. That's not his intention. His intention is to sell. Okay? I'm going to make a motion to give them 6 months to sell the property. There is to be no work that requires permits done on the property. In 6 months, if somebody wants to make an amendment about inspection, I'd do an inspection then, but I'll give them 6 months to sell it. There's to be no work. Work that could be done is cleaning. Some of those pictures, there's a lot of cleaning that might help sell it. But there's not to be any work done on this that requires permits, because we can't. It's tagged. It's tagged. It's tagged. You cannot get a permit. You cannot do the work that requires a permit. It's tagged. It's different from being ordered demolished. It will help in the sale. No, okay. Is there any more we want to make an amendment?
Friendly amendment. So,
You guys
support with a friendly amendment? So, clarification, you're doing a motion, 6 months to market the property, no repairs, which, my understanding is a given, you technically can't. But I would like to add that when it comes back to us, because unfortunately I have a feeling it will come back to us, that at that time we have a current inspection presented so that we can consider everything at once. We can make sure just the concerns of the public was that we don't have current information. I want to make sure we have current information. And then I would also like to include that within 2 weeks, a report be submitted to council from Landmark Church regarding the 3 quotes and a final listing price for the request of Mayor Webb. So we have that information, so we're aware that this is not a CVS type scenario. Yeah, so we can see, make sure that fair market value is in fact what's being presented to potential buyers.
Can I make a suggestion? When you talk about selling, are you talking about closing? Are you talking about a purchase agreement? Are you talking about having the money in the hand? I think you should be clear that 6 months.
You sir are an attorney.
How about,
He's a good attorney.
how about we'll split the difference, a signed purchase agreement
With the closing date,
with the closing date.
see how easy it is to.
Are you able to reread this, James? Read that further.
hang a hand, is there any more amendments to the amendment?
Is the friendly amendment in support?
We got this, we got everything good? All right, read it back, James.
Okay. So, the motion by Mr. LaCuro, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Aubrey, was that 24520 North Chrysler would have 6 months to sell the property, which is to mean that a signed purchase agreement with a closing date will be in place. And furthermore, no work that requires permits will be done on the building. If the property comes back before City Council, an inspection is to be done. And within 2 weeks of presumably today's date, that a report will be submitted to Council with 3 quotes and the listing price.
Thank you.
3 estimates of market value.
3 estimates of market
That's
value.
what she said.
Three market analysis?
Market analysis.
Okay.
I just wonder if it's practical to get 3.
Two.
Two is fine.
Two.
I'm concerned about the length of time, I'm not objecting to the number.
21 days?
I don't know how long.
We can give them 21 days. Another week?
Is that part of the amended motion?
21 days.
So,
21 days.
is that, okay. You got this?
Yeah.
Does that suffice? 21 days suffice?
I think so. Arnie probably knows better than I, can I get it?
I think you can.
Bill, I don't know anything.
All right.
We're trying to get it within 21 days, if not, I'll be back in 2 weeks and ask for it.
Thank you.
Or if I can get it in 2 weeks, that would be fine.
A roll call vote, please.
Councilmember LaCuro,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Aubrey,
Yes.
Councilmember Sullivan,
Yes.
Councilmember Holland,
Yes.
Mayor Webb.
Yes. Thank you for coming out. We take everybody's comments to heart, and I took them toward because my father called me today, and he's the pastor of a church, and he's the pastor of church here. And the organization in which he belongs to, somebody got through to them, and they called him, and he called me. So it doesn't have much of it has a bearing on my decision, but being that I was raised in church, it has a bearing. They have to do what's best for our community as well. So, and what they are doing, I think, is the best, what is best for the Pastor Barry and the church at hand. So they made you guys make the decision, and it really took a lot off of us. I'd like to move on to, I'd like to have a short recess. Can we get a short recess?
Yeah, and Mr. Mayor, if I could say something, I just want to say that I appreciate you guys coming up with a unitary decision, because that's what's required. You can't, it's got to be one way or the other. And the ambiguity with this whole thing was what was creating all the delay. So now we know which way they're going to go. We know what their attorney said. I'm happy.
Motion to recess for 5 minutes.
I would support. Please take a recess for 5 minutes, and we're going to go in and the next issue of listening to all our department heads.
No, I do have a couple of questions on this up here. Yeah.